Actually, being in Ukraine sort of makes us in Britain feel more European. I think sort of the lesson of the last year has been that Europe needs to invest more in hard power, build a bit more strategic autonomy. You know, we've been in a long-standing and very productive relationship with the United States since the Second World War. I think we all recognize times are changing. You know, sort of sometimes we overinterpret this and attribute it to President Trump. I think President Trump has his own style. I spent a number of years in Washington, and when you're in Washington, you used to think let's differentiate between kind of what the immediate administration is saying and what the long-term trend is. And I think it's a fact that, you know, every U.S. president since John F. Kennedy has told Europe we ought to spend more on our defense. You know, under President Obama, they talk very openly about the need to, United States' desire to rebalance from Europe to Asia. And I think, you know, we've been a bit slow to react to that. I think the way that Heiko said, I think sort of Putin's actions in Ukraine have been a wake-up call. I think, regrettably, have been a wake-up call since 2022 rather than since 2014. And I think sort of President Trump has brought a different approach. The old rules-based order feels a little weaker than it did 2 years ago. Not just because of, you know, what's happening in the United States, but the way Russia has behaved, China has behaved, and the like. So I think what's happening in Europe is a recognition that we need to take responsibility for our own security. I think there's a political awareness that Ukrainian security and European security are now indivisible. You know, we have trends in Europe too. I think European investment in defense has increased, of the NATO members of Europe, has increased 50% since 2019. So that preceded 2022, but obviously that process has accelerated over the last year. There were very important commitments made at the Hague summit last year. I know what's happening in my own government. I think what's happening in Germany in the last year or two, both in the politics and expenditure, is sort of epochal in my professional experience. So I think we need to invest more. We want to preserve the relationship with the United States. We feel stronger because of it. It's served us well. But I think we need to take more responsibility and invest both in our defense budget, but also building up our military industrial capabilities. And I think those things are happening. We see, you know, groups within Europe and within NATO, particularly around the Baltic countries, sort of coordinating more tightly. UK and France have been very involved in discussions of the coalition, and they're willing to try and position us so that Europe can play an important role in security guarantees. And I think that when I take a long-term view of the United States, Europe is responding to what successive U.S. presidents have done, and I hope that will actually strengthen our relationship.
So we talk about more strategic autonomy for Europe. Do you think it relates to the nuclear dimension? Yesterday, the New START treaty expired. Medvedev, war criminal Medvedev, directly says that a new nuclear winter is coming. Is London afraid?
Afraid is the wrong word, but I think we're open-eyed about the risks that we face from Russia. And I think that one of the things that's going on, I don't want to speak for France, but in London, they're talking again about firstly ensuring our nuclear deterrent is as modern as it can be. Should we only, at the moment, we rely on submarines? Should we have more than one mechanism in the discussion with our French friends and others within NATO about whether or not we can provide, a tactical nuclear weapon support to NATO? So I think it's open-eyed. I think that what's happened since 2022 has refocused strategic thinkers in UK and Europe on the need to restore deterrence and how we do that. And clearly, there's a nuclear dimension to that, but our first choice would be to do this through very strong conventional forces and through strong and robust diplomacy of the sort, which I think Europe has done on issues like sanctions and cutting its economic ties with Russia.
Thank you, sir. By the way, not to forget that I would like to congratulate you on the first anniversary of the 100-year cooperation agreement that Ukraine and the United Kingdom signed a year ago. So, you know, there is a lot of symbolism in the very title of that agreement. So it means that there is a strong stance and actually that we are sure that both the United Kingdom and Ukraine will survive. We will go through all these challenges. And here comes the Budapest Memorandum thing and the memories of the Budapest Memorandum and the memories of the security assurances that were translated in Ukraine as the security guarantees. And now we know that the Financial Times unveiled some details, as they say, I have no idea, is it true, of the collective security guarantees that are being promised to Ukraine. Do you think this is credible? I mean, do you think that these collective guarantees that are being discussed diplomatically, politically, they will provide what is actually needed? The only thing which is needed is to make sure that Putin understands that he cannot move on.
Yes, I think they can be made. I mean, I think there are two things. Firstly, when we talk about security guarantees, we're diplomats. You know, we want to see a negotiated solution. We believe there has to be a negotiated solution. But I think we all understand, you know, your lesson of Budapest, indeed the Minsk process. Ukrainians need to know that if they are going to make peace and make compromises for peace, they need to be 100% sure that Russia won't attack again, or if Russia attacks again, they're not going to be on their own. And I think that's understood, and I think that's understood in my capital, and I think it's understood in other capitals in Europe. You know, I think Mark Rutte was here this week. I think it was very important that the NATO Secretary General was talking to the Rada, and I thought he set out probably more politically than anyone has before. You know, clearly the first element of security guarantees is a really strong Ukrainian military capability. You have it. You have the largest army in Europe. You have the most combat experience. We're all learning from you. You've learned to innovate brilliantly. You've changed the nature of warfare. We, as your allies and friends, need to ensure that you can properly finance that. You can properly re-equip and modernize your forces and make sure that you can buy the weapons you need rather than the weapons we can perhaps spare, as I think we could criticize us for in the last few years. But I think it needs to be a European dimension, a number of European forces. Countries have committed to deploying troops here, both to help with training, but I think send a political signal to Putin. Surprise. Rutte's phrase was some in the air, some on the ground, and some ships in the Black Sea. And then with the US backstop, and it's not for me to talk to the US backstop, but we know that the US brings both a unique sense of deterrence and power. So I think we've made good progress on that, and I think that actually the other strong element of the diplomatic process since November has been that there's a clearer idea about the future economic and political relationship that Ukraine will have with Europe and the United States, including European Union membership. Not for me to say when, but I think that sends a powerful signal. And you mentioned our 100-year partnership. We're no longer members of the European Union, although we strongly support the idea of Ukraine joining, because I think that's a political signal that you're not in the Soviet space. But I think our 100-year partnership, which is a bit intimidating for me, is that we don't have a 100-year partnership with any other country in the world. I think is our way of saying that we see beyond the war and we want to be friends with Ukraine, not just friends with Ukraine, but partners, and we want to do things with you and share university students and share technological projects and learn from your experience in the military.